Welcome back to the Up in the Blue Seats podcast, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post. Plenty to get into today. Obviously, I am not Jake Brown. I have hair on my head. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube, Jake is he'll be out, so I'm pinch hitting, and thankfully we have a busy show today. We have, as always, the great Hall of Famer Larry Brooks. He'll be joining us a little later. He'll be answering some questions from the fans and perhaps give us another one of his famous New York Ranger nicknames. Stay tuned for that. You'll have to see what that might be. But until then, we are joined by the New York Post Rangers beat writer Mollie Walker, and she is back from the road trip. She's back from celebrating her birthday in the great state of New York, but Buffalo, doesn't really count. I don't really wasn't sorry Buffaloians, but Buffaloans. I don't know what they're called. But regardless, Rangers, as you might have heard, big road trip they just had. But look, there's plenty of places we can start here, Molly. First, you wrote a story about Igor Shesterkin, and I think it's a message that we've kind of been talking about. We've been preaching pretty much the whole year that this Rangers team will only go as far as Igor can take them, very much like last year. And despite adding guys like Tarasenko, adding guys like Kane, it all comes down to the goaltending. And Igor, as you kind of wrote, he's getting his groove back. In the OT win against Buffalo, he stopped 32 of 33. And to quote you, because I like this quote, I'm putting it, he stole 2 points for the New York Rangers. And, it's a good win. It's a must-need win, considering this division that the Rangers are battling for right now. So how exactly is Igor getting his groove back, Mal?
I'm not totally sure. I haven't had a lot of chances to talk to him, and that's definitely something that I hope to do in the next couple of days because I am in complete agreement with you. It's been invaluable for the Rangers that it looks like Igor Shesterkin is starting to get back to his level of excellence that everybody has come to know from him, especially last season. But that Sabres game, not only did he steal the 2 points, but that's just a sentence that I feel like I haven't written, that other people haven't been able to write as much as we did last season and even the season before. Probably only a couple times it's happened this season. But the fact that even he was good in Montreal too, even early on in the game against the Sabres, it did kind of look like he was having some trouble seeing the puck, looking behind him a little bit and having some sort of delayed reactions occasionally, but that he got sharper as the game went on. And since after that, he was really on top of his game. And like you said, that's just the way this Rangers team is built, that they have been so spoiled by elite goaltending over the years. And that's what the roster has come to know and expect. So if they are able to get back into an offensive groove, then at the cost of some defensive lapses, but that's the thing. That's just how they're built, and this is not nothing new. Everybody knows that this is how they've been built, and they kind of just embraced it even more and brought in guys like Tarasenko and Kane. It's up for debate whether or not that was the best move, but seriously, that's who they have, and that's how they're built. So they with stellar goaltending from Igor Shesterkin and Jaro Halak, they should be able to get away with it. They should, but because you're not going to tell Artemi Panarin to play a different way. You're not going to tell Patrick Kane to play a different way. You're not going to see Artemi Panarin back checking as much as all the other guys. But that's who he is. He is the highest paid guy on the team. That's just who he is. That's how he plays. And you don't want to apologize for it. You got to embrace it, but you also have to put all the pieces together. So that's the next step for this Rangers team. And again, it's only been 3 games with a full lineup with Patrick Kane in it. Let's not forget that. 3 games. 3 games. And Tyler Motte didn't play in one of them, and Ryan Lindgren hasn't played in any of them. So that's also another aspect to consider. Breathe. Just breathe. Give it a little bit of time. Gallant is doing the right thing and switching up the lines a little bit, because the early alignments were pretty discouraging. Lots of turnovers. So I think that, you could argue that they do need some more time to gel, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that original alignment come back in the next few games here. But that's that's where they're at right now. And it's just going to take some time, I feel.
Absolutely. And, as you mentioned, at least, guys are starting to contribute. I mean, last episode of the podcast, we heard about Patrick Kane and his failure to launch in essence since coming out. But since then, 2 goals and has helped this Rangers team. But like you said, the backbone of this team is the goaltending. It is going to be Igor Shesterkin. It's going to be Halak. So where there are some of those defensive lapses, that's where you're hoping these guys will step up. And you saw them step up on the road. Another piece of the Rangers that have been stepping up, though, is not the first or second or third, but the fourth line, the line of Jimmy Vesey, Barclay Goodrow, and Tyler Motte. And again, another great article. Highly suggest everyone check it out on the Post website. Molly wrote about the fourth line. And look, one of the things I loved hearing from Coach Gallant is when he said that the Rangers don't play as, the first line, the second line. He wants them playing as one line. And that's essentially what this fourth line is kind of developed into. Last year we had the kid line. This year we have the fourth line. And, again, kind of like Igor, they're finding their groove. It's exactly what you want to see at this point. What's the reaction from Jimmy and Barclay and Tyler, about how the fourth line has been operating recently?
They've seemed extremely comfortable, and I think that that's come out in the product on the ice as well. Talking to each of them individually about it, it's the fact that Mott was out for a couple games there too. The fact that they haven't had a lot of time to gel, haven't had a lot of time to mesh and find out each other's tendencies, and they're still playing this well early on is a great sign. And for this team, I feel like the fourth line, especially for a majority of the season, kind of was having an identity crisis. Every single line saw a bunch of different combinations, but the fourth line in particular just really felt like it was the leftovers in the lineup. No rhyme or reason, just kind of the last guys there that, didn't fit into the top 9. And that's no way to be constructed. But it feels like, Jimmy Vesey and Barclay Goodrow have been 2 of the most consistent guys for the Rangers the entire season. Jimmy Vesey has been such a pleasant surprise, brings the same thing every night, and just has such a great attitude about it as well. So putting those 2 together, and then a pest like Tyler Motte, who is just all over the place, constantly applying pressure. They were the only line the last 2 games that was able to hold the offensive zone and make it look kind of effortless. But that's also a bit of a red flag for this Rangers team right now. The fact that the fourth line is looking like and acting like one of the most consistent units. So that's obviously something that's going to have to change going forward. But after the fourth line was such kind of like a weird spot for the Rangers, a weak point, even still Gallant will cut down on the minutes for the fourth line. But the fact that those guys have not only been, looking like they have a lot of chemistry, but starting to contribute offensively too, is huge for the Rangers. And I think Larry wrote it today as one of the best fourth lines since 2014. So that's good for them.
Listen, the Rangers do need to right now. They need to find that little consistency, especially in the fourth line spot and whatnot. And, like you said, Jimmy Vesey's been a revelation. I've been saying it all year, and it's great to see, him really take hold of his roster spot and whatnot. Quickly, before we get to Larry here, Ryan Lindgren, obviously Rangers are getting healthy. They're getting certain guys back, but Ryan Lindgren misses 7 straight game. Longest stint in his 5-year NHL career, out for games, whatnot. Do we have any sort of update on him when we could possibly see him back, you think?
I think we could see him back as early as Tuesday. I know that, he's the type of guy, he likes to be on the road trip no matter what. And he kind of said that the other day when we got to talk to him finally. So I don't know if they came into the road trip without intention of playing him, or if they were trying to see if he would come around and be able to go. But it does sound like he's on the ups. He said that the first couple of days were really tough. And he also said that this is an injury that he kind of experienced earlier on in the season. He missed 2 games earlier on. It was on that interference penalty from David Pastrnak. So this time around, it took a little bit longer to heal, he said. So I think that he's coming around, and the Rangers just can't get him back soon enough. That's for sure.
Listen, I'm all for, letting guys take their time, especially at this very critical point of the season. We got a month and a half left, roughly, and very, very big games coming up. So, as long as he takes his time and Rangers get him back and healthy spirit, that's the most important thing. Well, coming up next, we have the Hall of Famer, Larry Brooks. You're going to want to hear this one. It's we got a lot to talk about. Now it's time to welcome in the Hockey Hall of Famer, the great Larry Brooks. As always, you can read Larry Brooks in the New York Post. Larry, Molly kind of teed it up in the last segment how you wrote an article and commenting on the Rangers' fourth line, which we're kind of discovering here is a rather important piece of this Ranger team currently. So I've got a twofold question. Well, actually, it's more so a question, and then I need you to do some homework for me here. So the question is your thoughts on the fourth line, and as a homework assignment, whether you can give it to us on this week or maybe later in the week, whatnot. You bestowed Henrik Lundqvist the King name. And we used to have, or we still have the kid line. So now I need you to come up with a line for the fourth line with Vesey, Goodrow, and Motte. We need something catchy, something that's going to make people go, that's the fourth line. But the fourth line's too generic. So think about that. Get back to me on it. But your thoughts on the Rangers' current fourth line?
Well, let's wait to see if it lasts more than a week.
I think it will. I think it will.
No, it will. Listen, Goodrow and Vesey have been two of the team's most consistent forwards all year while playing up. Jimmy Vesey was a very effective top six player. Didn't score a lot, but he was very effective in on the forecheck, holding the puck below the hash marks. And Barclay Goodrow, brings that kind of game every time he steps on the rink. So it's not a surprise that Vesey and Goodrow are being effective. And now that they've been joined by Tyler Motte, they have a defined responsibility. They have a defined role. They can, they're a forechecking group. I mean, I've always thought that Jimmy Vesey was at his most effective when he's physical. And that goes back to his rookie season. I think I've mentioned this before, but his series against Montreal in the first round in 2017, that's what he did. I mean, he was as physical a player as there was on that team. He carried it over a bit into the next round against Ottawa when the Rangers were upset or beaten, actually. I guess they didn't have home ice. So that's the kind of game, Jimmy Vesey has that quality in him. It doesn't materialize every game. He's not a big player. He's not a big guy. It's hard to carry that over 82 games, but in a limited span, this is what he's made for. And so is Goodrow and Tyler Motte, an aggravating player. Not very big, but he's aggravating. He's in opponents' faces all the time, and that's the kind of chemistry I think the three are developing. And I think as I wrote, and it's for a piece that is appearing in Tuesday's paper, it's their best fourth line going into the playoffs since 2014, when they had Brian Boyle on the left, Dominic Moore in the middle, and either Dan Carcillo or Derek Dorsett on the right. That was a really good fourth line. Gallant likes to say, like every coach likes to say, he's a four-line coach, but he's really not. And very few coaches are. But with this unit, the Rangers need to become a four-line team. They do. I mean, they need to get their big guys on the ice, but there's a big guy on the ice all the time now. It's not like they throw the first line on and that's it. And then, you're going to have Kane, then you're going to have Zibanejad, or you're going to have Kane, then you're going to have Panarin, and then you're going to have Hedl. And so they're always going to have offensive stars on the ice. It's important for them to give time to that fourth line because they need to have shifts where they control the puck below the hash marks. They just need to. And that's a line that does that extremely effectively. So I like that unit a lot. I think they should get a lot of ice time. The one issue with ice time is that Vesey and Goodrow kill penalties too, so they may miss a shift, and Motte will jump in, so they may miss a shift here and there coming off specialty teams. But it's not a traditional big banging physical fourth line, but it's a unit I think that can change momentum of games, and I think that's essentially what you want your fourth line to be able to do.
So that's the only line that Gallant hasn't touched in the last couple games here.
Yeah.
The rest of the lineup, on the other hand, has been pretty much in a blender for 6 periods now or so. What lines do you want to see?
Listen, I think it's important for them to reach some sort of stability here. There are only 16 games to go. It's enough time, but it's not a lot of time. And I think they need to find their units. So on one hand, I understand that Tarasenko and Zibanejad are beginning to form a little bit of chemistry together, and I like that. But that's not the line that I would. That's not the combination I would go with. And in fact, I would go with an entirely new, really top 6. I would like to see them go with Lafreniere on the left, Zibanejad in the middle, and Kane on the right. That's what I'd like to see their first line be, because here you have, on the left, Lafreniere, energetic, forechecker. He's going to retrieve the puck. I think he wants more responsibility. I think he needs more responsibility at this time. You've got Patrick Kane on the right, one of the premier playmakers of the last 15 years, and you've got the shooter in the middle. And you've got the shooter in the middle who is a great defensive player too. So that's my first line. My second line has Panarin, Chytil, and Tarasenko. Chytil and Panarin haven't played together a lot. They've been together for 6 games, I think around 90 minutes. Their numbers are pretty good. It's a very small sample size, but that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Chytil and Panarin play. I think Tarasenko gives a shooting mentality to that as well, along with Chytil, and I think they complement Panarin's playmaking game, his pass first game. And then I'd like to see the third line with Kreider, Trocheck, and Kakko. I think Kreider and Trocheck are straight line guys. They've played well together this year. Trocheck's playing with a lot of bite now. Of all the things that have happened in the last couple of weeks, where the team has kind of been going through upheaval and contained turmoil, just within their line, within their constant juggling and all the maneuvering they did. We don't need to go into detail on that again, but over the last couple of weeks, I think one of the significant bright spots has been Trocheck. I think he has elevated his game. I think he's playing the way he did for Carolina last year against the Rangers in the playoffs. I mean, every shift he was on, he was in somebody's face. He was barking at somebody. He was jabbing somebody. He was around the net all the time. And watching him play in that second round last year, he was a player you looked at and said, you know what, the Rangers could use this. And I think it's taken a long time for Trocheck to get to this place. But he's here now. And again, I think you have a straight line combination: Trocheck, Kreider, and Kakko. And so that would be my third line. I think they're also a line that would be able to control the puck below the hash marks. But I think that regardless of what they do this week, of how they line up this week, it's going to be a challenging week. It is. Washington is desperate, and who was in on Tuesday night, and then the Penguins Thursday and Saturday. They see the chance to catch the Rangers, and it's there. But however the Rangers line up this week, I'd like to see it gestate for a while. And this is not a criticism of the coach, who's been given this alphabet soup of ingredients and on the fly, down the stretch is trying to come up with a recipe here. So I don't, this is not a criticism of him, of Gallant, but I think it's important that what the Rangers do, they give it a little time to breathe, and they don't switch it they don't switch it in the third period against the Caps, and they don't switch it in the second period against the Penguins. I think they need some permanence here, because again, there is time, but there's not a lot of time to start from scratch. Most teams don't start from scratch following the trade deadline, and it feels to me that that's kind of what the Rangers are doing now. I think they're resourceful enough and talented enough to get by, but getting by is not what anyone is looking for from this team. So those are my combinations. I wouldn't expect to see them, but that's how I would go.
Gallant was so funny in Buffalo on Friday talking about how he basically was like, I'm trying so hard not to switch the lines because he knows that they need time to breathe and they need time to gel. But that being said, those early combinations, bleeding turnovers, and it wasn't just like just not discouraging or just a couple bad games, but it was bad. Like he had to change them. He had to do it. Another guy who's probably struggling a little bit right now, Artemi Panarin. Just what's your assessment of him lately? I mean, he's just been also a bit of a turnover machine. You took that OT penalty on Sunday. Just what are you seeing from him?
Well, I think he's trying to do way too much to accommodate pain, and and it's natural. I get it. I mean, he wants to do everything to make his former line mate and his friend feel comfortable. He's trying to force it to him. I think he's taken on not only his own weight, but the weight on Patrick Kane too. And it's too much. He needs to simplify his game. He's like going in a million directions at once now. So I think Panarin needs to settle down a little bit here. I think separating him from Kane is a good thing. Look, as this goes on and this evolves, you can always put them back together again at some point.
Yeah. Which I think will happen, honestly.
Well, you know what? I think too.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out. But the difference between the way Gallant is coaching this year and last year has a lot to do with the fact that, in his line combinations, has a lot to do with the fact that last year there were two solid combinations, two solid two-man combinations you could always count on. And that was Kreider and Zibanejad, who played together every game last year, every game. And there was Panarin and Strome. And they don't have that this year. But that's what they need to find. And they need to find that fairly quickly. They need to find two-man combinations before they then fill in with the third. And that's when I look at my lines, I tried to start there. But I think Artemi needs to, relax a little bit. He seems like he's just a jitterbug all over the place on the ice. And, he's trying to handle the puck at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I think he just needs to step back from it a little bit. Not take Patrick Kane's weight and just go about his own business and let Kane, fend for himself as much as possible.
One last thought on the lines, though. Knowing what we know about Gallant and seeing how he's operated this season, my impression is that he does look at Kreider and Zibanejad, Panarin and Trocheck as his two duos that he really likes to lean on, though. So I almost kind of want to see Kane and Tarasenko switch too, just to try that out. Why not? Just they're two top six guys, flip them and see how that pans out. That's my top six.
Yeah, I'd like to see Kane with Zibanejad.
Exactly.
That's what I'd like to see. And then if you want, look, I'm fine with playing Kreider up there too.
Yeah.
I just think the Kreider Trocheck connection is a little stronger than Lafreniere. Trocheck would be.
The other thing, Kreider, Trocheck, and Kakko, we saw that line briefly on Sunday, and they were very noticeable. Yeah. Very, very noticeable. I think I don't know, remember how many. Let's see. Do I have it up here? I think I do. Yeah, here we go. Kreider, Trocheck, they logged 6 minutes and 36 seconds together. So it was very brief, but it was pretty encouraging. I really liked it. So I would agree with you in that sense. Moving on, we do have a few leftover subtext questions from my Molly mailbag that didn't make the cut. So we got this one from Martin Carangelo. What is wrong with Adam Fox? This is the worst hockey we've seen him play. Is he hurt?
That's a good question, because I actually touch on that topic in this piece for Tuesday. This is probably the most ordinary he's been over an extended stretch.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether, maybe there's a little bit of fatigue if he's playing through something.
It's been a lot of minutes.
I think that's sorry.
It's been a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I know, and I think that's always the default position when Adam Fox struggles. You think there's something wrong, because this is not Adam Fox. But the way we say, "Oh, that's not like Adam." There have been moments of that's not Adam moments in every game, basically. And look, I think part of it is missing Lindgren, who they're salt and pepper, or
the straw that stirs the drink.
But Fox actually started to have trouble before Lindgren went out of the lineup. I mean, he had about a week. I thought it was toward the end of the trip through Canada and through Western Canada, the middle of last month, where suddenly his decisions seemed off and he was forcing plays. And so I'm not sure. I mean, the best players in the league are allowed, 2 or 3 weeks where they're ordinary. If anyone on this Rangers team is, doesn't have to apologize for that, it's Adam Fox. At the same time, though, the Rangers need him to pick it up again. They can't get by with an ordinary Adam Fox. They need Adam Fox to be one of the best 2, 3, 4 defensemen in the league, which he essentially has been since his rookie season. So I'm not overly concerned, but it's been part of the problem for sure.
We got one from Zbop. What's the top priority for the Rangers this summer regarding roster and cap constraints? Is it getting Philip Hedl signed, extending Ryan Lindgren, maybe trading one of the kids for someone more established?
Well, I think we'll find out, actually. I don't think we'll know that until the season ends. I think a lot of the decisions will be informed by how players play in the playoffs. And so, yes, there's a serious challenge ahead. But can players play themselves into the picture off their playoff performance? For sure. Can players play themselves out of the picture if they're ineffective in the playoffs or the next month? For sure. So I think, put that on hold for now. I think there'll be an evaluation not only of individual players and the personnel, but of the way this roster was constructed after the playoffs. I mean, is this the way? I've talked about this a lot. I've written about this a lot. Is constructing a team with 3 scoring lines the way, can you win the Stanley Cup that way? I'm skeptical. I think, as I've said many times, you need a third line that's a hard-edged matchup shutdown line. You go with 2 scoring lines, and you have the third checking line, and you have your fourth one. That's my formula. Maybe it's a little bit old school. But that's what I would prefer, and I think that it'll be an interesting experiment to see how the Rangers do in this year's playoffs, because they will have enough maneuverability over the summer to make these kinds of decisions if they want to try and reconstruct their roster rather than just add to it. They couldn't do it at the deadline. It was unrealistic for Chris Drury suddenly to say, you know what, we need to have a shutdown line. Yeah, couldn't do it. Not the way they're set up. So they'll ride this way, and we'll see. And then I think there'll be obviously evaluations once the season is over.
I think the other thing that we'll find out in the playoffs is whether or not all the cap gymnastics and running the team into the ground was worth it to acquire Patrick Kane, which I feel like is going to be a pretty underrated narrative that the Rangers could be staring in the face come the playoffs. So that's also something I'm curious to see, because right now in addition to the fact that they look out of sync and a little disjointed or a lot disjointed, they look tired to me too, as well, after playing shorthanded, and especially with the defensemen, how many minutes they had to skate in that crazy stretch there. So that's something that I feel like is also a looming question for them as well.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time. It would not be the first time they faced a issue like that. Larry, before we let you go, one more. You wrote over the weekend about how the Rangers are possibly the third best team in the metro area. And I'm sure that ruffled a lot of Rangers feathers there, or Ranger fans feathers there. Obviously, you said you're not handing out any Stanley Cups or anything like that. But what's your thoughts on the metro currently right now, at least the metro area between the Islanders, Devils, and the Rangers, and what the Rangers need to do to, I guess, get back on the upside here?
Well, I think the Devils are the best team in the area. They have been, honestly, since the second week of the season. They had a bit of a dip, in January maybe, but they recovered from that so quickly and so well. They passed Carolina on Sunday night. They're the team to beat in the Metro, loaded with talent. I mean, you talk about the Rangers' talent. Devils are right there, and there's a lot less wear and tear on those on their players, and those legs. There's no question about it. The Islanders look, I think the Rangers have a better team than the Islanders, but the Islanders are a mentally tough team that can shut it down.
They're also built for the playoffs, I feel.
And right, they're built for this time of year. I don't think they're built for the 82 game haul.
No,
they just managed to survive really.
Yeah,
the first 60 games of this.
Yep, I agree.
And the reason, or a primary reason, is their goaltending. That Sorokin is to them what Shesterkin was to the Rangers last year, but Sorokin does it every year. Sorokin's been more consistent than Shesterkin throughout his, their brief careers. So I think the Rangers are better 1-20 than the Islanders. I think they're far more talented, but the Islanders can shut it down, and they're built for this, and they're built for this time of year. They're built for playing in tight spaces. Rangers aren't. And so I didn't necessarily say the Rangers were the third best team in the area. I said are in the Rangers.
Just posing the question. Just posing the question innocently. No big deal.
Listen, I should send that into Molly Mailbag.
Yeah, you should.
Hey, listen, you got to ask the question. You never know. It's worth posting. Larry, you got me hungry for alphabet soup, so I'm going to let you go here. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
And that wraps up episode 117 of the Up in the Blue Seats podcast, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post. You can catch up on all episodes of the podcast by subscribing to the Up in the Blue Seats podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. Take a shot every time I say the word podcast here. You will be annihilated, I swear. If you're watching us right now on the YouTube page for the New York Post Sports, please click that thumbs up button, comment below. Tell us how you're feeling about the Blue Shirts right now. It's getting to that crunch time here. So you let us know, and maybe we'll get back to you on that. You can also give us a follow on Twitter, Mollie Walker. That's 2 E's and 2 R's, and myself, Andrew Harts, with HARTS, no E there, so you can kill that as well. Molly, as we mentioned earlier, you spent your birthday this past week in Buffalo. Did you do anything fun up there?
It was a really hectic travel day. Like, it was like the worst travel day of my career, if I'm being quite honest with you. I had a 7 a.m. flight, which included a 4:30 a.m. wake up. And then it was delayed out of Montreal, and there were no direct flights from Montreal to to Buffalo. So I had to do a layover in Detroit. And because my flight was delayed an hour, if my second flight, my connection wasn't delayed the 30 minutes that it was, I would have missed it, and I would have missed practice. And not only would I have been furious that I woke up at 4:30 a.m. for nothing, but I wouldn't have gotten to be wished a happy birthday by all the Rangers players, which was so much appreciated and a really cool moment for me. I always wish them a happy birthday, so they probably felt absolutely obligated to wish me a happy birthday. And I share a birthday with Tyler Motte too, so him and I were like that Spider-Man meme. Happy birthday, happy birthday. So, yeah, it was fun. It was a good practice, and as long as I made it there in time, that was really all I cared about. But I am still catching up on sleep from that day. It was pretty brutal. And we went out to dinner. Me and my friend Rachel, she works for Buffalo Spectrum News. She took me to a really nice place in Buffalo, and we had some cocktails and some lobster, and I was very happy.
Ooh, see, there you go. So once you start mixing in, a little lobster, hopefully it was you had plenty of meat in the lobster.
Yeah.
Between Molly and I, unfortunately, no one else is going to get that. But
maybe we'll tell that story another day because it's a good one.
It's a good one. Listen, I mean, it sounded like a hectic day. At least everything kind of worked out. There's not too many people that can say that they get a happy birthday wish from the entire New York Rangers. That's freaking awesome. And I mean, listen, it could have been worse. You could have, been in oral surgery, getting your wisdom teeth taken out, like our compadre Jake Brown. So who we wish well wishes to, and hopefully recovers well. And we get to see if he has a chipmunk mouth next week. So until then, though, for Mollie Walker, Larry Brooks, I'm Andrew Harts. We're back next week for another episode